This is the week from hell. I mean, it's supposed to be a celebration. We're in the playoffs, and you go through and look at practice reports, and it is Tyreek Hill misses practice. Brian Robinson misses practice. Chris Olave misses practice. Nobody's at practice. So I'm going to go through. I'm going to try to do my best to rank these guys. Of course, I'll update y'all with injuries both on Saturday and Sunday. Starting off tier 1, CMC Tyreek. No need to talk about him. Tyreek hasn't practiced in 2 days. If he plays, you play Tyreek Hill, though. So we are going to monitor the practice report on Friday. Really hope that Tyreek will be good to go against the Jets. Next tier, CeeDee Lamb, Kyron, Kamara, Bijan, St. Brown, A.J. Brown. Really have no question starting these guys. Yes, I understand. Kyron Williams is at a very aggressive ranking for this week. Going up against Washington, beautiful matchup. Kyron Williams, one of the very few 3-down bell cow backs at this point. Crazy to think. By the way, if you didn't know, last year I said this literally could never happen, and here it is happening, which is just crazy to see. But Kyron Williams, top 5 flex option this week. Now, jumping down to our next tier, we're going to go Rachaad White at 9, going up against Green Bay. I mean, it's a fine spot. White also one of the very few true 3-down bell cows. He has the receiving role. It's going to give him a very high floor from week to week perspective. Should be a game that is pretty competitive between the Bucs and Packers. Then we're going to go Diggs, Evans, Jefferson. Yes, we're moving Jefferson up to 12. I understand this is much higher than what we had him in the wide receiver rankings. My worry with Justin Jefferson is I figured it was going to be a spot where he was a game time decision. He was limited in practice, limited in practice, limited in practice. Then it was going to be a game time decision, and all of a sudden he was going to play 50 to 75% of the snaps. But no, Jefferson gets cleared to play, I believe, on Wednesday, super early in the week. So that gives me the confidence to say that Justin Jefferson is going to be someone that we can go ahead and start confidently. And if you go out there and look at the underdog pick and what they have with Jefferson right now, they are putting him at a very aggressive projection. Now, Michael Pittman will be up there with a very aggressive projection as well. I have a couple high stakes underdog teams that I really need Pittman to do well in, so maybe I'm a little bit biased when we rank him here. Going up against Pittsburgh, you would think it's not the best matchup on paper, but ultimately, I mean, they have a 22.5 point implied team total, so it's still a fine spot. Deebo Samuel, beautiful matchup. I mean, we're going to go through. We are going to take Deebo here going up against the Cardinals. 31 point implied team total. If you're the Niners here, should score a zillion points. Jamar Chase at 15. Obviously, the issue is very bad offense, but Jamar Chase is an elite level player. Jamar Chase at the same time is a wide receiver that is making up a high percentage of his team's offense. So yeah, we're going to have Chase, but I don't necessarily want to come out here and act like he is just a locked and loaded top 5 option. And then Raheem Mostert will be our next guy at 16. If you are looking at Mostert, this is much higher than we had him earlier in the week, but we don't know if Devon Achane is going to play or not. And if you have no Devon Achane, then at that point, Raheem Mostert may project out to be a top 5 back. It's not a good matchup going up against the Jets, but we know this offense is going to be able to move the ball down the field almost regardless. So for that reason, I'm going to be completely fine to go through and just rank Mostert here, given his touchdown upside. Achane is going to matter a lot as we go through the next few days in determining where we rank these guys. I'm going to play Mostert no matter what, which is why we have him ranked here. But if Achane were to be good to go, then obviously it does slide down just a bit. We're going to go Jahmyr Gibbs at 17. With Gibbs, you have the receiving upside. Obviously, Montgomery is still someone taking a considerable amount of looks, but it's a great matchup going up against Denver. And we have seen that Gibbs will be involved at the goal line. Travis Etienne will be our next guy with Etienne. Going up against the Baltimore Ravens, it's a brutal matchup. I mean, this is a team that now has an implied team total of less than 20 points. The Ravens have one of the best defenses in the league. So while Travis Etienne typically would be up there in tier 2 or tier 3, just because of the matchup this week, we are going to be a little bit lower on him. Tony Pollard should be a very high-scoring game environment. I understand. Yes, people hated on Tony Pollard all year. I mean, I didn't draft the guy at all, but I kind of just stood by the fact that you have to start him every single week when you're playing in an elite offense and you have that 3-down workload. Saquon Barkley, not in the elite offense, but he has every single touch of the goal line. He has the receiving skill set. Zach Moss actually in a better offense here at 21. But Moss isn't necessarily the same level talent that you have with Barkley. So it really comes down to, do you want the situation or do you want the offense that they're in? And then we'll go Brandon Ayuk, DJ Moore, Puka, and Cooper Kupp here 22 through 25. Super excited about playing all these guys. I mean, Ayuk, obviously, great spot going up against the Cardinals. One of, if not the best offenses in the NFL. DJ Moore has just been phenomenal every single week with Justin Fields. Now, is a tougher matchup going up against Cleveland. So despite the fact that DJ Moore is averaging about 18 points per game, they have an implied team total of only 17.5 points. So I'm going to be a little bit lower on Moore this week than we will be next week. If you look at his underdog pick 'em, they currently have him at 65.5 receiving yards, which is actually lower than where Puka's at. Puka is at 70 receiving yards, more than less than for his underdog pick 'em. And Cooper Kupp is at 75. So, I mean, if you were looking at those projections on Underdog, where Kupp is at 75.5 receiving yards, that would put Kupp at the very top end of this tier. I mean, I understand why they are putting them there, right? Like we said, the Rams offense projects out to be the second best offense in the NFL, and Kupp looks to finally be fully healthy. Just with Kupp, he had 6 really disappointing weeks in a row. Now he had 1 solid week last week. I would rather see a little bit of a larger sample before we go out there and rank him ahead of someone like Puka. And of course, if y'all wanted to say Mason is crazy, Kupp's not getting 75.5 receiving yards, or Puka's going way more than 66.5 receiving yards, you can find that over on Underdog Fantasy. The link is in the comment section and the description. Promo code FLOCK's going to give you a 100% deposit match, plus our rest of season fantasy football rankings and tiers, and a special Lamar Jackson pick'em more than less than half a total yard for the 17th. Now, going over to our next tier, we will have Derrick Henry leading us off. So you had no Nico Collins at practice and no CJ Stroud at practice on Thursday. We don't know the availability of CJ Stroud just yet, but if you were to have no CJ Stroud, I think Derrick Henry's in a really good spot where the Tennessee Titans should be favored over the Houston Texans. And we know that games typically go in the direction of Henry if the Titans are able to be competitive. So yeah, I would really like the matchup. Now, if you end up getting CJ Stroud healthy and good to go, then we will move him down. Breece Hall and David Montgomery will be our next 2 guys. I mean, if you're looking at Breece Hall, he has the receiving skill set, so you kind of just have to start the guy every single week. David Montgomery, great matchup going up against Denver. A little bit frustrating, of course, if you're a Montgomery owner, seeing the Jahmyr Gibbs red zone usage, just because it does lower him down a bit. We'll go Mixon Swift. I understand that Swift has been very bad as of late, but really over the past 2 weeks, you had the Eagles getting blown out, right? The Eagles get blown out by the Niners. They get blown out by the Dallas Cowboys. Naturally, that's not going to be a DeAndre Swift game environment. Here, it should be a lot easier to go out there and rely on Swift. Right now, they have met 76.5 receiving yards for his underdog pick'em. I'm sorry, total yards. Now, Javonte will be our next guy at 31, with Javonte is monopolizing this backfield. Detroit has been really struggling as a defense overall. So you'd have a 21.5 point implied team total for the Broncos offense. And we'll have a group of wide receivers here at the very end. We'll go Devonta Smith, Chris Olave, and DK Metcalf. I mean, if you wanted to go through and move Metcalf over Olave, I'm not going to fault you for it. My thought process is, okay, well, you have no Michael Thomas. I mean, hopefully Olave is good to go. This is someone that didn't practice over the past 2 weeks. Now, going over and looking at our next tier, we will have Ezekiel Elliott leading us off. With Zeke, this is a running back that obviously is only here if you have no Ramondre Stevenson. If Ramondre ends up playing, then we're panicking. You move Ezekiel Elliott significantly down. But right now, he's at 84.5 total yards on Underdog. The reason I'm going to have him ranked this low is just, I think it's going to be a very tough matchup against KC where you don't have touchdown upside. I mean, right now, you have a 13.5 point implied team total for the Patriots offense. They do project out to be the worst offense in the NFL this week. And I'm saying this hoping Zeke has a massive week, because in a $1,000 Underdog tournament, we are currently rolling with Zeke and need a big game. Now, DeAndre Hopkins or Rashee Rice will be our next 2 guys. With Rice, don't love the game environment going up against New England just because they're not going to be able to move the ball down the field. And with Hopkins, I can almost say the same thing if you have no CJ Stroud. Honestly, if you had no CJ Stroud in that game, I'd assume that they lean on Henry a little bit more. And I'd be fine moving Hopkins down behind someone like Ridley, even though Hopkins is averaging about a point more per game than Calvin Ridley currently. With Ridley, it's a very tough matchup going up against Baltimore, which is why we're going to be a little bit lower on him, even though he looks like he is going to have consistent target volume now that you have no Christian Kirk in this offense. Now, James Cook, Kenneth Walker will be our next 2 guys. With James Cook, It's just a very tough matchup going up against Dallas. Now, Vegas is telling us that this is going to be an offense that should still be able to move the ball down the field. I mean, right now you have an implied team total of almost 26 points. If you're going over and looking at the underdog pick'em, you have James Cook at about 80.5 total yards. So if you are looking at that, they are saying I'm way too low on James Cook here. And James Cook should be at the very top of this tier. And honestly, probably are too low. Now, Jalen Waddle will be someone else that is very difficult to rank, right? Because if you are looking at Jalen Waddle, this is a wide receiver that we don't know if Tyreek Hill is going to be good to go. If Tyreek Hill doesn't play, I'd bump up Waddle considerably from here. But it's a very tough matchup going up against the Jets. So if you have Tyreek good to go and Waddle's in a very tough matchup, I'd probably look to avoid him if we can. And then Pacheco, Achane will rank back-to-back 42, 43 just because I have no idea if these guys are going to be good to go. It's not like it's black and white where if they have a concussion and they're cleared, they're for sure going to play with their usual workload. Now, I mean, these injuries could eat into the workload that you would naturally expect from these guys from week-to-week perspective. So it will be very difficult to go out there and rank them now until we have a full understanding of what they're going to be looking at going into the week. Now, we will have Garrett Wilson, Cortland Sutton, Zay Flowers, and Amari Cooper all back-to-back. All these guys are averaging about 12 to 13.5 points per game. With Zach Wilson, I understand he looked good last week, but ultimately, if we take a step back, that's really Zach Wilson's only good NFL game. I mean, you're looking at an implied team total of less than 15 points for the Jets. Right now, Vegas is telling us they're supposed to be the second worst offense in the NFL this week. Now, jumping down to our next tier, I have no idea if Brian Robinson is going to play or not. So I'm going to put Brian Robinson / Antonio Gibson here at 48. If you have no Brian Robinson, I'd be very comfortable starting Antonio Gibson in a high-scoring game where we know this is going to be a player that can be used as a receiver, and he would have that large workload going up against the Rams. But we're going to have to monitor to make sure that Brian Robinson does not play this week. We'll go Chuba Hubbard at 49. He is taking over as a 3-down workhorse, right? Now, the issue is you're Chuba Hubbard, so you're not super good, and you're in one of the worst offenses in the NFL. You have an applied team total of about 16 points. So you know what? Maybe you can say that he's a lot closer to Ezekiel Elliott than where we have him ranked. But with Zeke, you don't have Miles Sanders possibly taking 20 to 25% of the work. Now, Drake London, Jaden Reed will be our next two receivers. With London, I know he was great this past week. Keep in mind this is someone we had as a buy low candidate about 3 weeks back coming off an injury. Ultimately, it's a tough matchup going up against the Carolina Panthers from a fantasy perspective because we know the Panthers offense is going to have a very hard time moving the ball down the field. So, I mean, we shouldn't expect too much passing volume here in the second half. Going over to our other guys, we'll go Tyler Lockett at 52. We're going to have to monitor all the injuries that we have in Seattle. Don't necessarily know exactly what we have with Geno right now. And then we'll go Ty Chandler, 53, and James Conner, 54. Running backs that should have large workloads. Running backs that should be in very bad offenses this week. James Conner will be much higher than this usually. The issue is when you're going up against the Niners, obviously, we assume that your touchdown upside severely capped, where you only have it as 17-point implied team total this week. Now, Aaron Jones, another player that I don't know how to rank. I've been saying, well, if Aaron Jones is going to go, I'm still not going to be super excited to play him just because what we saw earlier in the year is, yeah, Aaron Jones may be good, but at the same time, they may go out there and they may limit him his first few weeks back. They may play it safe here. The issue is A.J. Dillon's not at practice. Aaron Jones has been practicing in a limited capacity where A.J. Dillon just hasn't shown up. So I don't know if you have no A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones is good to go, then at that point, I think Aaron Jones would be higher in these rankings. But if A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones both play, then I'd probably rather see it before we actually have to start them. We'll go Najee Harris, Jalen Warren, back-to-back 56, 57. These are committee running backs. We've said it all year. Never super excited to start one of these guys. I mean, if you were to have an injury to either or, then the other guy becomes exciting. We'll go Jerome Ford at 58. Honestly, maybe Ford should be ahead of Najee and Warren, just given the fact, good matchup against Chicago, 20.5 point implied team total. And honestly, Flacco's looked much better than we are expecting. And then we'll go Terry and Higgins, 59 and 60. Now, one of my favorite underdog pick'ems this week, let me see if they still have it for y'all, is going to be looking at Terry McLaurin, where Terry McLaurin, they had him at 59.5 receiving yards. We are slamming the lower on that. They has moved down to 56.5, I'm assuming, because there are a ton of people hitting the lower. I don't know if I still love the lower on 56.5 receiving yards for Terry McLaurin, but this is a wide receiver that's only averaging about 11 points per game so far this season. I mean, someone that's been very disappointing overall. But I think that's all I have for y'all in this video. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Like I said, super hard to make these whenever there are so many injuries that are up in the air, but I will update you tomorrow and on Sundays. Just make sure you're subscribed. And if you wanted to check out any of those underdog pick'ems, you can find that link in the description, comment section. Promo code FLOG will get you a 100% deposit match, plus our rest of season fantasy football rankings and tiers. And on top of that, a Lamar Jackson special pick'em, more than less than half a total yard for Sunday night. One last thing, I'm about to start uploading daily videos again on the Dynasty channel. We just had another one drop today. I'm going to stop uploading videos on this channel very soon. I'll make sure that we finish the regular season with y'all. But yeah, I'm not going to be uploading anything here in the off season. I upload everything on the Dynasty channel just because I'm assuming the majority of y'all watching this don't care about fantasy football in the off season. But if you play Dynasty, if you play in a keeper league, and you are interested in that, you can search the Dynasty Football Vlog on YouTube, where we should have videos daily for you. But thank you again, ladies and gentlemen. I really do appreciate you. Really hope you have a great day, and really hope we get to see you out with the live stream later tonight.